Coming up today on The Story.
You know, Hindus obviously believe that there are many gods, so Jesus can just become another god in their suite of gods. You know, so there wasn't that my parents were against me being a Christian when I first became one, but, you know, like it just got all enmeshed together. It wasn't until I became closer to teenagehood that I was actually working out what was Christian and which one was Hindu sometimes.
The Story.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colefax. Welcome to The Story. Well, author Melanie Saward was born in Australia to Hindu parents from Fiji. Growing up in Sydney, she was understandably a bit confused as she was sent to a Christian school while following Hindu traditions at home. Today, Melanie will share her story with us as she has a chat with Eric Scatterbo.
Melanie Saward, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Glad to have you with us. And where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining from Brisbane.
Okay, up there in Brizzy. And let's find out a little bit about your background. Were you born and raised in the Brisbane area?
No, I wasn't actually. I was born in Sydney and was raised there. We moved up here to Brisbane, my husband and I, about 14 years ago. We worked out this week. And so that was after we got married, about 2 years after we got married that we moved up here. But yeah, most of my experiences have been in Sydney with, you know, family down there. And it's where I became a Christian, where I first started attending church as well. So yeah, most of my experience has been in Australia, but more recently in Brisbane.
And tell us about your parents.
Yeah, so my parents are Hindu. They were both born in Fiji and came to Australia, I think it's about 40 years ago now. And I am the only one of my family that is born in Australia. And they came to Australia by themselves and didn't have family to support them. So they had to do everything from scratch. And they were really, really passionate about giving us the kind of future that they felt was, you know, well provided for. And so both my brother and I were sent to Christian school with the assumption that Christian schooling would be the best in terms of education because it's a private school environment.
Here they're Hindus, but yet they sent you to a Christian school.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, my mum also went to a Christian school in Fiji, so she knew exactly what it was going to be like. But yeah, they obviously did that for education. I think they didn't really think about the fact that I could come out of that schooling scenario having been as passionate as I am about Jesus. So I think that kind of backfired on them a little bit. But, you know, it's all good. We have great relationships, so, you know, they're all good.
I'm just wondering, what was your childhood like? You're being told one view of the world at home, the Hindu faith, and then you go to school and hear a whole different kind of view. Is that kind of what you were experiencing?
Yeah, I found it quite interesting. Like, I am naturally a bit of an observer of people's behaviour, and what I found was that I got this incredibly vivid kind of view of Christian families through my friends and all that kind of stuff. But then I also had my own experience. What it made me often feel like is that it was really hard to feel like I was fully connected in one or the other. It was very much felt like I was always on the fence, just watching everything happen. And I know that it definitely affected my interpretation of faith growing up as well, because, you know, Hindus obviously believe that there are many gods. So Jesus can just become another god in their suite of gods. And so, you know, so there wasn't that my parents were against me being a Christian when I first became one. But, you know, like it just got all enmeshed together. And I kind of, you know, like looking back, I'm not really sure I fully understood what was Christian and which one was Hindu sometimes. It wasn't until I became closer to teenagehood that I was actually working out, oh, right, okay, that's what Hindus do, and this is a Christian thing, because you have the ability to comprehend what you're doing and understand it better. But I'm sure it was confused for quite some time when I was in that pre-teen kind of phase. And, you know, like my parents had a little prayer closet at our house, and I know that like some of my Christian friends and their parents felt really awkward sometimes sending their kids to our house because they'd be confronted with questions like themselves about why does Mel's family have a little prayer room and, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I presume it was really just the grace of God, to be honest, because I was able to walk that through, and it wasn't usually weird for me.
And when did you actually put your faith in Jesus?
So I think it was probably around the age of 8. The specific age is all a bit grey to me, but it was quite interesting how it happened. So from what I understand, I was coming home and asking a lot of questions about God and Jesus, and I really have always been like a bit of a philosophical kind of person. And I had a cousin who was actually moved to Australia for about 6 months from Fiji just to study, and she was staying at another family's house, but she'd come and visit us every couple of weekends. And I can very clearly remember being at our breakfast bar one morning and talking to her about Jesus and saying, like, I heard, this is what Jesus is about, and etc. And my parents and my brother and everything were all upstairs fast asleep. And so she actually took me through the prayer to receive Jesus. And so from then onward, I actually was attending church with her. She was going to a Pentecostal church, a sort of ACC sort of church. But she then had to go back to Fiji. So it probably was only for about maybe 3 or 4 months that I was attending that church. And then she returned, and I pretty much didn't go to church again until I was about 14. But yeah, that was like the moment that I officially received Jesus into my life, kind of thing. Yeah, and then of course the journey was like interesting from there on. Like, I probably still didn't quite understand how the Hindu faith and the Christian faith were interacting, because I was still going to the temple with my parents, for instance, and offering the foods and all that kind of stuff that you do there, having to participate in prayers when they had prayer ceremonies at home, and then going to school and hearing about Jesus in assembly. But somehow it worked. Again, just think that it's the grace of God.
I was going to ask you, do the two conflict with each other, or was there some kind of a harmony in a sense? Well, at least in your experience.
I think on the surface it feels like there would be harmony, because Hinduism kind of attests to having this faith where it's accommodating of other faiths. So, you can be a Christian as well, because Jesus just becomes another God. But to be faithful to what Jesus says, it can't be consistent with Hinduism, if that makes sense.
Right. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, the life. No man gets to heaven except through me. So the whole idea of having several gods is in direct contrast with Hinduism. But apparently you didn't know that at such a young age. Is that right?
No, not at like 8. 8 was probably too young for me to comprehend it. But, I mean, there were obviously things I observed that were so blaringly different between the two faiths when I was growing up, which was that, if I actually asked my parents about Hinduism, they often couldn't really answer my questions, because Hinduism and Indian culture is so intertwined. They often do things because it is a cultural expectation to do things. They don't necessarily always know why. It's just what we do. It's you're born into this. Like, you're a Hindu because you're born into Hinduism. So whereas I could ask questions about the Christian faith, and I would have, teachers or friends explain to me about how Jesus answers this question, or how Jesus... So there was already those kind of things that were clearly making it obvious to me that the faith that I could have in Jesus was one that was real, that could actually heal, and wasn't just about behaviours and routines and sacred holidays that you celebrate that you have no idea why you celebrate. Now, that's not the case for everyone who's Hindu, by the way. That was my experience, yes.
You're listening to The Story. Today, Eric Scatterbo is chatting with author Melanie Saward, who's sharing about what it was like growing up in a home with Hindu parents and following Hindu traditions while attending a Christian school and growing in her new Christian faith. We'll hear more of Melanie's story when we return.
The Story.